Welcome, welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here. Did you want to say anything before I jumped into the conversation?
Yeah, thank you everybody so much for joining us. This is a presentation hosted by NAMI, Sarasota, and Manatee counties. Just a little bit about NAMI. We are the nation's largest grassroots organization dedicated to mental health and serving individuals with mental health conditions as well as their family members. So our big focuses are education, support, outreach, and advocacy. So we thank you all so much for being here tonight. If you do have any questions, please feel free to utilize the Q&A little box down in the bottom panel, and we will allot some time at the end for some questions and answers. And with that, thank you so much, Kim, for being our speaker tonight. We're looking forward to it. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And it is an absolute honor to be here. And my name is Kim LaMontagne. I am coming to you here tonight from Sarasota, Florida. And I recently approached NAMI Sarasota Manatee because I relocated down here. And as you can see on that screen right there, the very bottom title that I have is I'm a state trainer for NAMI New Hampshire in a couple of their programs. And so I reached out to the Sarasota chapter to say, how can I help you down here? So here I am today, and I am in my 9-to-5 job. I'm a corporate mental health trainer. I'm an international speaker and author, and I train leaders in the workplace how to create a safe workplace culture through a leadership training that I developed to allow people within organizations to feel safe, to have open conversations about mental health. And I was just also recently appointed the Wellbeing Director for HR Florida. So I'll be doing a lot of work in the HR space. But tonight, even though I'm a corporate trainer, I have the lived experience, and I am here tonight to share with you just some tidbits of information on how to manage your own mental health during the holiday season. So what I'm going to do just briefly here is to briefly share my story. I won't go very deep into it because of the amount of time we have, but on your screen are 3 versions of me, spanning from 2009 on the left all the way up to 2019. I was a high-performing corporate executive my entire career. I was a leader, a trailblazer, the one who people came to. I was the coach. I was the one with the out-of-the-box ideas. I was the leader that people looked up to as like the pillar within the workplace. But behind all that performance, my entire career, I hid the fact that I lived with major depression, suicidal thoughts that were persistent every single day, anxiety, and then alcohol misuse, where I consumed every night between 5 and 9 glasses of wine, followed by blackouts and hangovers. But I got up every day and I went to work and I performed because I didn't want anyone to know my secret. I was too afraid to say that I was not okay. I was too ashamed. I was afraid of being judged, losing my seat at the table, losing out on promotions. I was afraid of being fired. So I remained quiet, and I almost lost my life. Now, that picture in the middle is, I think, one of the most important pictures that I have in my list of pictures. The one on the left is from 2009. It is my passport photo. It's probably the worst photo I have. But that was about 2 months before I entered into sobriety on July 16th, 2009. I'm coming up on 14 years sobriety next year, and very proud of that. But when I entered into recovery, it was anything but easy. Yes, I gained this new sobriety in my life. I gained more clarity in my life, but I had more problems that could no longer be solved by the Band-Aid of alcohol, which led me into deeper depression that I never spoke about. Deeper depression that I was too ashamed to speak about because it was associated with the alcohol misuse, which I so stigmatized myself back in those days because I saw myself as a bad person. someone who couldn't control her drinking. And I just felt unworthy and I felt like an imposter. So that picture in the middle is 2015. Again, my story goes very deep, but that's in 2015, on a day that my vice president asked everyone on our remote sales team to take a photo and upload it to their Office 365 profile so we could get to know what each other looked like. We were a brand new team. I took that photo in my kitchen, and then after I took that photo, I dropped to my knees and had the most intense suicidal thoughts that I have ever experienced. I had logical reasons why I didn't belong here. It was a horrific day. And no one knew. No one had a clue until one particular leader in my workplace got very vigilant one day and noticed some very subtle signs that her top performer just wasn't okay. And she had a conversation with me, a very safe conversation, where she allowed me to be vulnerable and speak my truth. And I tore off my mask that day and I spoke my truth and I told her everything that was going on behind my performance. And she asked me, how have you been performing to this level, Kim, with all of this going on in the background? I said, it's very simple. Fear and shame. I no longer have either one of those anymore. But I was so afraid and I was so ashamed to acknowledge that me, a high-performing corporate executive, a mom, a wife, had a problem. That leader changed my life. She gave me an extended time off around Memorial Day weekend, 2016, which led me on a retreat that changed my life. And I'm going to go through a little bit about what I learned in this presentation. And when I came back from that retreat, I felt like my light had come back on and I started working with NAMI New Hampshire. Then I started sharing my story through the In Our Own Voice program. And I found that more and more people were coming forward and saying, thank you for sharing your story. I'm just like you. And so I knew that my story needed to be heard. So on April 1 of 2020, I left my corporate job. I left every single penny on the table, created Kim LaMontagne LLC, created a leadership training solution to train leaders how to normalize the conversation about mental health in the workplace. And this all applies also to your personal life, because this is all about you. This is all about how you manage your mental health. But sometimes we kind of need a reminder that we're not alone. And so I wanted to share a few things with you that I've learned along the way. Number one, my story is not unique, not by any stretch of the imagination. And that's one of the first things that I really had to embrace in order to keep my mind healthy. This is a strategy. Know that your story is not unique. You are not alone. There are many people around the globe who live with a mental health condition or have loved ones who live with a mental health condition. And heck, I can tell you, since I started doing corporate training, I get messages through LinkedIn almost every single day from corporate executives, from physicians, from high achievers, from people who used to be on my own sales team, who are watching what I'm doing, using my story, using what I've learned to teach leaders. And they're coming forward saying, me too, Kim. Gosh, thank you for being so vocal and sharing your story, because I suffer too. So that's one thing that helps me. The other thing that I've learned is that employees who live with a mental illness rarely feel their workplace as a place of safety. And I bring up the workplace because I would assume, no one ever wants to assume, but the majority of people who are here have an employer. And I know that there's a retired nurse here, so maybe you don't have an employer, but managing your mental health through the holidays and throughout the entire year is also being mindful of knowing if you feel safe talking about your mental health at work and accessing the resources that are available. I've learned that many employees, many people in general are afraid to ask for help because they fear judgment, retribution, and job loss. I've also learned that stigma and discrimination thrives on lack of knowledge and education. And we're going to go through some stigmatizing words and an exercise that may help some, if there's still any stigma within this group here or whoever's watching remotely, or misunderstanding about mental illness. So it's about really educating people to understand what it is and what it's not, to allow it to be more normalized, because our mental health is just as important as our physical health. And then I've also learned, again, many of you are employed here. If you are a leader, or do you feel prepared to open the dialogue about mental health? If you are an employee, is your leader prepared to open the dialogue about mental health? When you think about the amount of time you spend in the workplace, your leader has more of an effect on your health and your mental health than your physician does, who you're seeing maybe once a year, twice a year. You are in the presence, in the environment of a leader. And that's something that we all have to be mindful of. And sometimes we don't think about it. We think we get up, we go to work. It is what it is. But when we really talk about how important our mental health and well-being is, we really have to look at not just in our personal lives, not just throughout the holidays, but all year round, and especially where we spend the most of our time, in the workplace. So again, you are not alone. If you are not familiar with this, and if you are here tonight and you are feeling like you are all alone and you're the only one who is having a challenge throughout the holidays, 1 in 5 people experience or at least one mental health episode in their lifetime, and 1 in 5 are living with mental illness. 8 in 10 people feel that shame, stigma, and fear of ramifications are reasons why they do not disclose living with a mental health condition. Now, that statistic is for the workplace, but many of us still have that fear and shame that does not allow us to seek help for our mental health. And then the last is that mental illness is more common than cancer, diabetes, and heart disease combined. We're here to have a conversation today to normalize mental illness, because when we have someone in our lives who talk about who have cancer or diabetes, the open dialogue is there and we support them. So we need to really normalize the conversation of mental illness. One thing that you can do throughout the holidays, throughout the entire year, is look at your employee assistance program. If you are employed, there are 75% of medium to large organizations that offer an employee assistance program. This is something that you can do today, because the national average usage rate is 3 to 5%. 75% of organizations offer an EAP, but the national usage rate is 3 to 5%. Stigma, shame, fear are the largest barriers for people using that EAP. Less than half of the US adults get the help that they need. So what I want to do on this slide here is ask you a question: are you using your employer's EAP program? Feel free to comment in the chat. Does your employer offer an employee assistance program? And for those of you who aren't familiar, an employee assistance program is something that is typically company sponsored, where they offer free services for mental health counseling, financial counseling, nutritional counseling. Every employee assistance program is different, and they will usually give you a certain number of visits, either at no cost or at a lower rate, and then give you additional visits at a negotiated rate. If you're not familiar, if your employer offers an employee assistance program, I encourage you to ask your employer today, tomorrow. If you are an employer, do all of your employees know that this service is available? This is an extremely effective tool, especially around the holidays, where people can call in. It's confidential. They can talk to a counselor and start to really work on the issues that they're having a problem with. Now, peer support. This is something I teach when I train leaders about peer support in the workplace. But I want to really take a look at this from peer support in your own personal lives. I'm a very big fan of Brene Brown, and she does research on shame. If you're not familiar with Brene Brown, I recommend looking her up. She has a book called The Gift of Imperfection. That's how I was introduced to her, but she talks about shame and she researches shame, and she's a pretty amazing speaker as well. But she also talks about the sense of belonging. And we need to have that sense of belonging in the workplace and outside of the workplace. And that really comes by sharing the lived experience, being able to talk about what's going on in our lives, and especially around the holidays. The holidays can bring up some difficult emotions, can bring up memories, traditions, that maybe you're trying to carry on for a family member who is no longer there. It brings up a lot of emotions. In addition to all the stress that comes along with the holidays, work deadlines, Christmas parties, everything, you name it, it's all on our plate. When we're able to talk about it through our peers. Now, again, you can look at this slide right here as peer support in the workplace, but think about peers in your own personal life. Do you feel supported? Do you have that peer network? Do you have that safe network of friends? Do you have a network of people who you can talk to that you know are going to be non-judgmental and will listen with empathy and may not fully understand what you're going through, but can help you work through the emotions while then you, at the same time, are seeking professional help? This is the most critical time of the year that we need people around us. I know for me personally, part of my story is that when I was at my worst, I isolated. That was the only way I knew how to survive, is by isolation. I needed pure quiet time. Now, I was in a sales role, but I had the ability to flip on the switch and turn into sales mode. But then when I was done, I could flip that switch off and I would just go right back in retreat. If I could change one thing in my past, it would be to not be so isolated, because what I learned is that the more I isolated, the more alone I felt. And I felt like more of an imposter because I wasn't talking about it. People weren't telling me that they were experiencing some of the same thoughts or challenges. So some of the things that are going to come up on the screen are really going to apply to both the work and also personal benefit of having a peer support and a safe network. Number one, it creates a safe space for open dialogue. Being able to talk about our emotions with people who are safe it's priceless. People tell me all the time, they reach out to me all the time. They say you're like non-judgmental, you're safe, I don't judge people. Not everyone has that ability. So choosing who is in your life to support you, not just throughout the holidays, but throughout the year, is incredibly important. It illustrates, when we have people around us, it illustrates that we're not alone. And we're not. There are 1 in 5 people who are living with a mental health condition. If we start maybe speaking more openly about it, more people will come forward, as they do with me all the time, and say, yeah, I went through that exact same scenario that you went through, and thank you so much for sharing it with me. I don't no longer feel so alone. It's going to help break down barriers. It could break down a barrier for you that you've been trying to break down. Having a safe circle, having peer support around you could be just what you need to have one single conversation that could lead you to the next step in your recovery process, getting better, allowing you to feel not so all alone. Maybe breaks down a barrier that you're weak and incapable if you see a counselor. Well, in my opinion, I think you're pretty darn strong if you see a counselor. It inspires employees or your family, yourself, your friends to take the first step. It's like having a gym buddy, have an accountability, a peer support, a family, open, non-judgmental, safe support system. When you have peer support around you, when you have a circle of safe friends around you, they can guide you through your journey of recovery. They can help get you connected to resources. Because I was so silent about my recovery, I had to develop my own roadmap because I was too afraid to ask for help. Now, had I asked for help and had more open conversations and dialogue, I might have been, referred or recommended to go to different places or access different resources, but I found them on my own. But I didn't have to because there's others out there around you that can also help you. And I'm so glad that you are engaged with NAMI because that is a great support system where you can access all different types of resources and programs to help you and your family and your loved ones. So talking about mental health, being in a peer group, having safe conversations helps dispel myths about living with a mental illness or substance misuse. And it then provides that roadmap, like I said, of available resources. So this next slide is something that you can use today to be proactive for your own mental health. I teach this to my leaders all the time, but it applies to our personal lives as well. So here we go. Number one, you want to know your own signs. And what I mean by that is, what behavior do you display when you are potentially having a stressful time, a mental health episode? If you are, do you retreat? Do you isolate? Do you stop eating? Do you stop returning calls? How do you behave in the workplace and also in your personal life when you are experiencing about a depression or anxiety or suicidal thoughts, or if you're drinking too much? Once you personally know those signs, that's gold. Because now you can then share those signs with your friends and your colleagues. Because you're the only one who really can be proactive about your mental health. You're the one who, when you are able to identify your behaviors and your signs, you can then voice them to others and then empower those other people and give them permission to reach in and help you when you are displaying those signs. Because sometimes when we are not well, and as many of you here, I'm sure that you would probably agree, if you have experienced mental health challenges, that some days you can be really great, and then other days you're just not so great. Sometimes, I know for me, I take medication. That works for me. I tried to go off my medication because I was feeling so wonderful. And then I'm not sure why my Outlook is verifying right now. And I experienced a very, very bad episode. when I tried to discontinue medication. And then I understood this is something that my body needs. And I went back. But I never told anyone what to look for. I didn't tell them all the things that could potentially happen. Hold on one second. It looks like my battery. Sorry about that. Looks like my battery just came unplugged. Okay, there we go. Because I was so quiet and didn't give anyone any signs or any direction, they were not able to help me. But if you know your signs, you share them with others. You say, hey, if you see me acting this way, if you see these behaviors from me, that is a clear sign that I'm having a very difficult time. And I give you permission to reach into me, tap me on the shoulder, ask if everything is okay, acknowledge that I'm displaying that sign. Because at that given time, you may not have the ability to reach out for help. Does that make sense? Because sometimes, I know for me personally, when I was in the depths of depression, I didn't believe I had the ability to reach out for help. But this is a way to empower other people to keep an eye on you and to give them permission. Hey, I give you permission. Tell me when I'm displaying these signs. And then go one step further. Guide them. Tell them exactly what works for you when you're displaying those signs. Have any of you ever, you're experiencing maybe a challenge, or you're having a bad day, you're stressed out, and someone just wants to come over. Oh, I'll come on over. I'll cheer you up. I'll bring over some food, or, I'll come over and I'll hang out and I'll watch some movies with you, or maybe I'll just pick you up and we'll go out. But all of those things that this person is suggesting would make you feel better are giving you anxiety, because right now the thought of going out is just too much for you to bear. Well, that person is thinking that that's going to help you. But if you tell them ahead of time, you know what? When you see that I'm displaying these types of signs, I don't want to go out. Please don't ask me to go out. Please don't surprise me with anything. I just want you to check in, maybe once, maybe twice, whatever works for you. Maybe bring me some chicken soup, but leave it on the doorstep and I'll pick it up. And it's no offense towards you. I just need my isolation just for a short amount of time, but don't let me go longer than an hour or what have you. So it's being very proactive, knowing what works, knowing what signs, share them with others, give them permission, and tell them exactly what works for you. It's extremely effective, and you can use it in your personal and also in your professional life. The other thing that I wanted to teach you about is your thoughts. Now, a good friend of mine who is a master's mental health counselor, he said this to me one day. He's like, you just can't let your thoughts grow roots. He also said to me one day, when you have those stressful thoughts, you have those negative thoughts, he said, just let it fly by. And I kind of visualize like a cloud. I see like a poofy cloud just flying by, like that's my thought, that's my stressful thought. But this one here, don't allow your thoughts to grow roots, really it got to me, and in a good way. So I wanted to share that with you. And I want to share a process that I have learned to allow my thoughts to not grow roots. Now, remember I shared a little bit of my story today, and I said that a leader gave me, noticed my signs and had the conversation with me that changed my life. She gave me extra time off around Memorial Day weekend, and I went to a retreat up in Rhinebeck, New York. And I literally Googled Memorial Day weekend 2016 women's retreat, or just retreat. I needed to just go away. Well, up popped this retreat center. I looked at the speaker and I said, oh my gosh, I need to go see her. Her story's just like mine. And I went to that 3-day, yeah, it was a 4-day seminar actually. And when I arrived, I was completely broken. Like I had no flame whatsoever. I had no self-worth. I was just broken. By the time I left that weekend, my light had come back on because she taught 300 of us this process. And it's all about questioning your thoughts. So when you have a stressful thought, I'm unworthy. You know what? Like, because I just messed up this huge project at work. I am unworthy. That's a thought that I would have believed many, many years ago. That thought would have grown roots that would have gone so deep because I'm unworthy, I'm incapable, I'm an imposter. I mean, that would have grown such a huge system of roots for me. But what I do is I ask myself these 4 questions that Byron Katie taught me how to ask. And then there's a whole process at the end, but I'm going to go through the first 4 questions. I didn't number them, but so you're thinking and believing this particular thought. I just screwed up on a project. I'm unworthy. Well, the first question I ask myself is that thought true? I am unworthy. And I really have to step back and think. First of all, it gets my mind off of that thought. Second of all, it puts me in the position to really question it and think, of course I'm not unworthy. I just made a mistake. But I'm not unworthy. And if that's the case, that thought is completely dismissed because there's no evidence that I'm unworthy. The second question is, are you certain that what you're thinking and believing is true? So she gives you 2 opportunities to question your thought. Is it true? If you answered, yes, it's true, first time around, then you'll have another chance on the second question. Are you absolutely certain that it's true? And it gives you the opportunity to pause and really stop. I'm unworthy. The third thing you ask yourself is, how do you feel when you believe that thought? And this is what really got me. Because when I believe that I'm unworthy, when I believe that that thought is true and I believe it, I feel this pit in my stomach. My chest gets tight. I feel like I don't belong. I feel like an imposter. All of these things really brings up how thoughts matter. Then the next question is, how would you feel if you released that thought? Well, if I didn't think I was unworthy, then I would feel free as a bird. So you see that process there, and you really have to go thought by thought, like thought by thought. And you can actually go to Byron Katie's, you can go to thework.com, certainly check her out. You can download worksheets and go through that. But that is a huge thing that helped me questioning those thoughts, because I used to believe every thought that came into my mind, and then I would let it grow roots, and then those trees grew huge with all negative thoughts. The next thing I really want to go through is words. And this is something that has also helped me throughout my recovery. Because I'm going to put up some words on the screen, and all of these words, I think, pretty much used to be in my vocabulary. I've used them all. And there is no judgment if these words are currently in your vocabulary, but I highly recommend that you remove them. And I'll tell you why. So let's go through these. Alcoholic, addict, nuts, junkie, psycho, crazy, schizophrenic, lunatic, bipolar, drama queen, frequent flyer, on or off the wagon, admit, committed suicide. I'm inviting you to remove these words and phrases because when I teach corporate leaders in my training program, I teach them about the 7 different types of stigma. And there is a type of stigma that is called self-stigma. So you are taking generalized concepts and endorsements, negative thoughts and beliefs about mental illness. If you and you're taking those stigmas and you're attaching it to these words. And these words are then attached to yourself. You be stigmatizing yourself, which could be detrimental to your mental health. Because when I believed that I was an alcoholic, I believed that I was worthless. You know, I felt like I was a junkie. I felt like I was psycho and crazy. I didn't feel good at all. But when we change from crazy or psycho to a person living with a mental health condition, we become people. And again, we're talking around the holidays, but this is all throughout the year. Changing your own internal vocabulary makes an incredible difference when we manage our mental health. Because we're not an addict if we're living with substance misuse, we're a person. That's the first thing you are. You are a person and you're living with substance misuse or living with heart disease, all those things. You're not an alcoholic. You're a person living with alcohol misuse. Instead of saying he or she is bipolar, how about saying that's a person in my life who's living with bipolar, schizoid, you know, sometimes people call themselves, oh, I'm just schizo, I'm crazy, I'm a psycho. Well, if someone is truly living with schizophrenia, they're a person living with schizophrenia. On the wagon, it's a person in recovery. Off the wagon, a person. They relapse because they're living with a condition. The last couple are admits. Someone from NAMI, New Hampshire invited me to change the word admit to acknowledge. I said, wow, words matter. So again, these are all things that really kind of help shift your own internal dialogue and potentially shift your own image of yourself, which can uplift your own mental health. And then committed suicide, the proper way to refer to that is died by suicide. And it's because when someone commits an act, or when we say someone commits an act, it's an intentional thing. When someone dies of a heart attack, they're not committing a heart attack. They're dying of the final symptom of their heart disease. When someone dies by suicide, they're dying by the final symptom of the mental health condition that they lived with. So it's about, we're all people. We're not alone. We're people. We are not our illness. And our illness, we must destigmatize ourselves in order to really work on our own mental health. Phrases to remove. I'm so OCD. I hear people say this all the time about themselves. Oh, I'm so OCD. I'm so ADD. That's crazy, insane, psycho. Talking about someone, they're anorexic, they're bulimic. Another is snap out of it. It's all in your head. All of these phrases, if you're using it towards yourself or you're using it with others, I invite you to remove these phrases because again, they further stigmatize and they further remove the person from the illness. But then there's also like the third one on the left, the weather is bipolar. So we're comparing someone who is living with a serious mental health condition to the weather that is changing from rain to snow and going back and forth. On the second column, second one up from the bottom, I had a panic attack when I saw my electric bill. That might be someone who's talking to you, who's experiencing a panic attack, or this is after the panic attack is over. We don't want to use phrases and compare a panic attack to an electric bill, but it's a common phrase. I had a panic attack when I saw it. So just be mindful for your own mental health and for those who are around you to use words that focus on the person first. And words matter. They can empower or disempower people. The last two slides, we're going to talk about social situations and then just some self-care. And then I know that we're going to have some questions. So social situations, just a few tips. Don't overcommit. I know it's super hard to do in the holidays. However, it is okay to say no. Some people have family and friends. You say, oh, you can't say no to that person. You can't. Okay, well, if that one is a challenge, who are you able to say, thank you so much for the invite. I am so grateful that you invited me. I cannot commit to it right now. I would love to get together maybe after the holidays or what have you. It's okay to say no. You have to put that oxygen mask on you first. So if something doesn't feel right for you, if something causes you stress or anxiety, and you have your safe person to say, gosh, I feel so stressed and anxious if I go to this person, or, you have the ability to say no and talk to people about it. It's okay to leave an event early. Don't blame me if you get in trouble for leaving an event early. But what I'm saying is, we all want to stay with our family and our friends as long as we possibly can. But many of us, including myself, all of a sudden, my social meter, all of a sudden, it's like all the way to the top. And it's like, whoa, I've had enough. I am overstimulated. I need to walk away. So I'm okay with saying, I need to leave now. Before, I used to hang around and stay in that situation, and it caused me anxiety and it caused me stress. But now that I'm open to say that, you know what, it's time for me to leave. I've had a wonderful time. I've hit my limit. It's okay to leave early. And one of the things that I always do is I drive separately. I always make sure. Some of you may or may not be able to do these things, but I always make sure that I have my own vehicle. To me, it's my opportunity. I can get away if I have to. One of the things that causes me anxiety is feeling like I'm stuck somewhere and I can't get out. And that can happen in the holidays. So just offer, let me drive separately because I may need to leave early. Bring your own drink of choice. This is for anyone here who is entering sobriety. I'm 13 years sober. When I first got sober, I had the hardest time navigating social situations without a drink because everyone wanted to know, how come you're not drinking? So I would bring my own drinks, or anytime I would go to corporate parties, holiday parties, I would order a soda water with a lime and a splash of cranberry. I was just at a human resources down in Charlotte County, the Charlotte County Human Resources Association. They had their chapter meeting today, and then they did a Yankee swap. 75% of the swaps were alcohol. Didn't bother me, but if you're in recovery, if you are on that journey, it's a difficult thing to navigate. And if someone asks you, how come you're not drinking? It's okay to say, I choose not to drink, and be okay with that. Don't compare, please. You are you, whoever you're around, holidays and all throughout the year. The comparison is the thief of joy. Please don't compare, and try and feel like you don't measure up to other people, because you do. Comparing can absolutely affect your mental health. Love who you are, know who you are, and absolutely don't compare. The last few things, self-care items, of course, exercise when you can. I know these are going to be simple things, but they truly do make a difference. For me personally, I go to the beach on Siesta Key every single night, and I watch sunset and I walk the beach. That's my time for my mental health. I've been away for 6 days and I'm ready to get back to that beach. I can feel it. I exercise. Get good sleep. I cannot stress how important sleep is to your mental health. The other thing I should have put on here is decrease the amount of time on your phone and on social media. We all know that social media is that's where everyone compares. So you know what? I should have actually put that as the first thing on this slide. Reduce your social media. Because the majority of the photos you're going to see on social media, those are all the A-reel photos or the A-side photos. You're not going to see all of the other things that are happening. Everybody's posting what's beautiful on social media. And a lot of us tend to compare ourselves, but we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So why overexpose ourselves to that? Eat well, nutrition, drink water. Nutrition is extremely helpful. If you are not eating properly, you are not putting gas in your car. You are the car, your food is your gas. You need to have that fuel. You need food. Make sure you get quiet time. Quiet time is extremely, extremely important. And it's okay to dedicate certain times throughout the day for your quiet time. Now, families, I know, and responsibilities, it's very, very challenging. But even if you have to get up early and just to be able to sit for 10, 15 minutes with your cup of coffee, or 5 minutes, whatever you have, it makes you feel special and connects yourself to you when you have time that's specifically for you. And you can use that time to meditate if meditation is something that's helpful for you. Deep breathing exercises, somewhere where you are just getting your mind still, your heart still, and really tuning into your person. It's extremely, extremely important. So the last two things I want to say is absolutely, you are not alone. None of us are, and we all matter. You matter. And as one of my great friends, John Broderick, said, it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to pretend that you're okay. So I hope this has given you, it's a little bit of glimpse into the corporate work side, but then also the professional side, how you can be proactive about your mental health, how you can prevent your thoughts from growing roots by doing that process with Byron Katie, changing your language and embracing that you are a person first, and it is okay to not be okay. So I will stop there and see if we have any questions. Let's see. Oh, Patrick, 44 years for you. Congratulations. Awesome. One day at a time. Okay. Does anyone have any questions, thoughts, or feedback?
There was one thing, and thank you so much, Kim. That was amazing. I wanted to bring up a topic that my staff and I were talking about that recently came out in the news about Ellen's DJ Twitch
Yes.
and the announcement that he died by suicide. And I think something like that, um, especially around the holiday season, is extremely difficult. Um, I think losing a family member at any point in time is difficult. I recently lost my grandpa, and this is going to be my first Christmas without him, and that's difficult. But I think especially when it's a loved one that's died by suicide, um, and you're left thinking like, okay, well, one, now no holiday is ever going, no Christmas is ever going to be the same. Um,
Right.
and why would that person choose to leave me right before what's such a magical time of the year? So just wondering if you have any advice for individuals who have, whether it's a loved one who died by suicide, or just individuals who are dealing with loss around the holiday season, and how to kind of cope with that.
Yeah, I would say that again, surrounding yourself with others. I was just with someone about an hour before this webinar, actually, and her son died by suicide 3 years ago. And he was a suicide prevention trainer. So there were no signs whatsoever. And what I've found in her situation is she's having a very, very difficult time and is not accessing as much support as she can. But she's now connected with her sister here locally in Northport, who is just exactly what she needs to really, help her through this, but really engage in support groups. And be able to, lean on others that have gone through this. And in terms of there's always questions, I know when I was very ill personally, there was a logical reason that it all made sense that I wanted to do that act myself. There was no question in my mind until I got to my daughter, and I just couldn't find a logical reason why it was okay. But it is a point where someone is at their most vulnerable and is at their sickest. Again, just like someone who has a heart attack, it's the final symptom, and it's unexplainable to anyone, and loved ones are grieving and left behind, and may or may not ever get answers that they're looking for. But just know that there is always hope. There is always a reason to go on. Your loved one is looking down on you, giving you the support and the courage that you need to make it through each day, and to be able to, again, engage in support groups, because being able to talk about things with others who have experienced the same thing is crucial. And it could take one or two support groups. You may find one and you absolutely love it. They're like family. Another first time around, and it may not be the right fit, but please don't give up on your first support group. Know that there are others around, even if you have to go to a different town. But the way I look at it, everything happens for a reason, and you will find that support group. But it is a critical piece for you to be able to manage that grief and not do it alone, especially through the holidays.
Thank you, Kim. It looks like Tasneen has a question. Tasneen, did you want to share your question in the chat box?
Oh, you're welcome, Emma. Have I? Oh, yes. Okay. So Emma said, thank you so much for sharing your story. Have you ever reconnected with the supervisor that recommended the retreat? She's still I recommend you follow me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I post about that later quite frequently. I've written a blog about her, because along with the doctor who saw me the day that I decided to enter sobriety, July 16th, 2009. I did it with the help of a doctor. I came forward. I said, I need help. And he was amazing. Aside from him, the person who really saved my life is that leader. And I tell her all the time how impactful that conversation was. She flew from New Jersey to Boston specifically to have a face-to-face conversation with me. She was not a leader that day. She was not a counselor that day. She was a leader. And I just recently posted about that day on LinkedIn, the day that we had the conversation. And literally, all she did was take a couple of extra days. I could have done that anyway, but it was her giving me the permission to say, Kim, you are overproducing. Take some time off. And then I retreat. But I posted about her on social media about a month ago, and she responded to it. And she says, every time I see you post this, Kim, it just makes me recognize how important my role is as a leader. And it gives her the 2020 vision that she has to